welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to announce a really fun readathon happening in February. This readathon is the Library Love Readathon, and it takes place from February 6th to February 19th. Kate Howe is the one who organized this whole thing, and there's a whole bunch of us that are participating, and I will link all of my co-hosts down in the description below so that way you can find their announcement videos. This whole readathon is basically about loving your library and taking advantage of all the wonderful things that your local library has to offer you. So for the most part, that's going to be books, but we do have one person who all of her prompts are not surrounding books at all. So there's multiple different ways that you can participate in this challenge. So we each have kind of tackled like a section or genre of the library and base all of our prompts around that. So you can tackle one section of a library and tag along with a specific person's prompts, or you can just kind of pick and choose as you want to. On my Instagram page, I will be listing all the prompts with all of the hosts. So that way you can kind of check and see which ones, who you might like to pick and choose from. But my genre or section of the library that I decided to focus on was travel, because when I think about the kind of books that I want to be reading in February, I want to be reading books that take me away from the dreariness of winter. And so what better way to do that when you can't travel in real person to travel through books? So my section is the travel section. So you could use nonfiction for this, like actually the travel section, or you can choose fictional books that fit this prompt, which is what I will be doing for the most part. So in this video, I'm going to share all of my prompts, and then I am going to give specific book recommendations for each prompt, in addition to telling you which book I have chosen to fulfill this prompt. Okay, so the very first prompt that I have is a book that involves travel or a journey. And so you could choose like a nonfiction book or a fictional book that depicts some sort of traveling that takes place. The first book that I thought of that fit the bill for this was Lord of the Rings, because that is just like an epic travel story. That's kind of a lot because it's a lot to read all three books, but you could just read the first book or maybe even read The Hobbit. I also thought of A Room with a View by E.M. Forster. I actually read this last spring, and it's a really good book that involves travel. The main characters actually travel to Italy, so there's a lot of detailing of that, and then they come back to England. And then the last book I wanted to recommend is Crocodile on a Sandbank by Elizabeth Peters. I read this last fall, and in this book, the main character decides to travel to Egypt and examine archaeological dig sites, and so that is really a fun aspect, but then there's a mystery that takes place too, so it's a mystery in addition to travel. The book that I decided to choose for this prompt is actually one that has not yet come in that I've requested from my library, and that is Finding Langston. I can't remember who it's by. I should have written that down on my paper, but I didn't, so I will have the picture up here so you should be able to see the author of this book. But this is about a boy, and he moves from the South to Chicago during the Great Migration. And it basically talks about him adjusting to a new school, having traveled there. See, it's about travel. And I think there's some bullying and stuff that takes place, and he really connects with Langston Hughes' poetry. So I've been wanting to read this for a long time. It's a middle grade book, and it kind of also ties in because February is Black History Month. So as much Black authors as I can be reading in February, I definitely want to be. So the next prompt is a book that has a sun on the cover or in the title. Obviously, different editions will differ according to what the cover looks like. So I may mention a book here that has a picture of the sun on the cover, and maybe your edition doesn't. So I'm sorry if that doesn't work out. So the first one that I want to suggest is Same Sun Here. This is actually a book that my daughter has read and really, really loved. It's an epistolary novel, a middle grade epistolary novel between two pen pals, one of whom lives in Kentucky, and then one of whom I think is maybe a Syrian refugee, or she's moved from the Middle East, and just them talking about similarities and their differences. And I believe it also has a sun on the cover in addition to a sun in the title. So kind of fits it either way. The other book I would recommend that has a picture of the sun on the cover is Sweep by Jonathan Auxier. I love this book so much. This is another middle grade book, but it is like sort of historical fiction, sort of fantasy, and it takes place in London, and it deals with basically children when they were forced to be chimney sweeps and how dangerous that was. So there's a big historical element that is part of this, but it has a lot of fantasy in it as well. So that's kind of a fun blend. And this was a book that just like touched my heart so deeply and made me cry a whole bunch. So this is like a middle grade book that even if you don't love middle grade, I think you would still really like it. And the last book that I'm gonna recommend, probably shouldn't recommend because I haven't actually read it yet. I'm gonna be starting it around the time that I am filming this video, but it'll be read in January, not February. And that's Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. And this book is a retelling of the Greek myth of the Minotaur. I've been wanting to read it for a while, and it has a sun on the cover. So I'm just recommending it to give you an idea. I can't tell you whether or not it's good. The book that I will be reading is The Sun Does Shine by Anthony Ray Hinton. And this, I guess, has a sun and the word sun. So I've got that twice. So I have been talking a lot on my channel recently when I've been talking about favorite books of the last quarter, favorite books of December, favorite books of the year. The book Just Mercy has come up multiple times. And Just Mercy is written by a lawyer, Brian Stevenson, who represents people who have been wrongly imprisoned and are on death row. And this is a memoir by Anthony Ray Hinton, who is one of the men that he represented. He's mentioned in Just Mercy, but he is not like the primary case that the book revolves around. I had so many people tell me that if I love Just Mercy, I really, really needed to read this book because it's absolutely incredible. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. And this is also by a Black author, so that's an additional win. The last prompt that I have is set in a country that is different from your own. There's so many books that take place in different countries than our own. Like, it's really easy for me as an American to find a book that is set in like England or maybe even Canada. And so you can do that. If you're gonna read a book set in England, I'm going to recommend to you All Creatures Great and Small by James Herriot. Oh my gosh, the series is one of my favorite of all time. If you're an animal lover, you will love it. It's amazing. If you're unfamiliar with it, it is the memoirs of an English country vet. So he treats not just cats and dogs, but also cows and sheep and horses and all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of funny stories, a lot of heartwarming stories, a lot of sad stories. So it does focus a lot on the animals, but also he practices in a very small town. So there's a lot of commentary on small town life and funny stories about people as well. So it's just great on so many different levels. If you're looking for something maybe a bit warmer of a climate or maybe a bit more different, I would suggest to you the #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. This is a cozy mystery series, really, but this is the first book in the series, and it takes place in Botswana. So the main character is a woman who she receives an inheritance from her father and decides that she wants to start her own detective agency and be the only detective agency, I think in all of Africa, but for sure in Botswana, that is run by a woman. A lot of the stories in here are really charming and really funny. I will say they're not like really gripping mysteries. They're not like Agatha Christie where it's really like who done it and you're trying to follow the clues. It's not like that at all. It's very different, and it is so much more about like the setting and the culture for me. When I read it, that was like the most unique and wonderful part of it. I'd also recommend Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park actually takes place in South America. So even though all the characters are in fact American, it takes place on an island in South America. So that's a really fun option, especially If you watched the movie as a kid or a teenager and you enjoyed it and you haven't read the book, I think that you would really, really enjoy the book also. So in addition to those books that take place in a different country than your own that I just suggested, you could take this prompt a lot more liberally and decide to take books that are set in a fantasy world or a made-up country. It does not have to be like an actual existing place. It can just be somewhere that is different from where you live. So for mine, I did use a more liberal prompt for that and decided I was going to read Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. This is book 2 of the Red Rising series. I was gonna say trilogy, but there's like an initial trilogy and then he's finishing up like a second trilogy. I don't know if they have like all the same characters or if they just take place in the same world. I haven't researched that enough, but I read Red Rising back in November and really enjoyed it. I did a reading vlog for it, so I'll link that in case you want to watch that and hear my in-depth thoughts on it. But I've been looking forward to reading Golden Sun for a while now, so I'm really excited to read this one. And I'm actually buddy reading it with my friend Dia, so that will be really fun. We read the first book together. But yes, this takes place in outer space. This is a sci-fi. And the first book took place entirely on Mars. I don't know if I probably could have maybe included this in like the travel or journey prompt because maybe they're traveling in this one. I don't really know. It very well could be, since there's a lot of sci-fi outer space stuff. A lot of times those books involve travel as well. So those are my 3 prompts that I have for my portion of the Library Love Readathon. And I hope if you use some of my prompts that you enjoy getting to travel somewhere different through a book. If you're stuck at home in gloomy weather or cold weather or yucky weather and you wish you could just get some more sunshine, hopefully some of the books that I suggested or books that you choose to pick for these prompts are ones that bring more sunshine into your life. Please let me know down in the comments below if you are intending to join in on this super fun readathon and get some books from your library. And if so, maybe some of the books that you would like to read. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.